What do you think is the most interesting psychology phenomenon? I'm amazed at the number of people who freeze in a disastrous situation like a sinking ship. People who survive tragedies like that always report that there's not nearly the amount of panic and confusion that you'd expect. A lot of people freeze in place and simply can't move, even as the water is rising around them. Families have been split up in situations like this, where two of them can move, but the other three can't. We tend to hate people that have the same flaws and make the same mistakes as we do. How I can have a surprise in my dream. Like something will happen and I'll be confused about it. Then someone will explain it by giving new information. And then it makes sense. But all of this is created by my own brain while I'm dreaming. How can I reveal new information to myself to explain something? False memories. How you can implant false memories in someone over time, and they believe they are real and their reactions are based on their own reality. My own personal experience with this. When I was 9 years old I was hospitalized with severe asthma that nearly killed. Blood oxygen level was 62. The entire hospital stay was such a blur because my brain was not functioning properly. Both my parents were in custody battles and tried to convince me the other parent never once stepped into my hospital room. The last time I spoke with my mother, about a decade, I'm sure she would still say my father never visited me. Luckily my grandma, the voice of reason and sanity in my childhood, simply said to me, "They both visited you. They are both telling you lies." The placebo effect. The idea that belief in something can actually have a positive impact on the body just seems so crazy to me. Also helped me realize inversely why stress and anxiety can take such a toll on you. If you get yourself to be really happy and excited to see other people, they will react the same to you. It doesn't always happen the first time, but it will definitely happen next time. Time and again this has always worked fine for me. Dreaming. Even though everyone does it, it's amazing that our minds create virtual realities for us nightly. If you can lucid dream, it can be more entertaining than any game technology has invented. Playing. When two animals play with each other, they both communicate aggression. They show fangs, claws, they bite, they go for the neck, etc. Everything about it should communicate danger, but they never feel endangered. Even when one animal accidentally hurts another. This happens even when animals are playing with animals they have barely known for some time. It blows my mind how the right context completely transforms all the communication between animals who play. Déjà vu. To have such a strong feeling that an instance has happened before is crazy. Like you experienced it in the past or dreamed of it. The Traxler effect. A psychological phenomenon where, if one is put into a dimly lit room, then look at theirself in the mirror for an extended period of time, they will see things in the mirror, but only the mirror. It is caused by the human brain being able to only experience so little at a time. There are things you aren't paying attention to and therefore don't experience. For instance, your blinking pattern or how the air feels. Your brain deems it irrelevant so it just cuts them off to process other stuff. When in the dimly lit room looking at the mirror, your brain deems stuff in the mirror irrelevant and just simply removes it from your sight. But it still has to put something there. But because it's irrelevant and doesn't know what to put there, it tries its best to fill in that void, and in doing so, makes something weird happen. I'm pretty sure there was an instance where someone tried this, and their mouth stretched out across their cheeks. The brain didn't know what to put on the cheeks, because it was deemed irrelevant, so it tried to fill the gap and failed. One of the most popular cases of this would be Bloody Mary. This could also happen without a mirror. Ever just be in your room, and out of the corner of your eye you see something looking at you, peeking around the door, but when you focus on it, nothing was there. That would be the Traxler effect. Dissociative disorders. A dissociative disorder is a mental disorder that involves experiencing a disconnection and lack of continuity between thoughts, memories, surroundings, actions and identity. People with dissociative disorders escape reality in ways that are involuntary and unhealthy and cause problems with functioning in everyday life. How laughter affects people. Laughter is basically the yin to stress is yang, which inspires me to make people laugh when I can. as I don't know what they are going through. Laughter increases things like dopamine and can even help soothe physical pain sometimes. The amount that the words we use and think in changes how we act. People who speak Spanish are less likely to blame someone for dropping something because the language is the thing was dropped rather than you dropped the thing. Australian Aborigines have no words for left, right, etc. Instead they use north, east, south, and west. As a result, they almost always know what direction they are facing, even inside buildings with no exterior view. Deaf children in Africa using a made-up sign language had not developed signs for describing positioning, under, over, to the right of, etc. And when tested, they could not find a hidden object, even when they watched it be hidden. They couldn't tell themselves in their own minds where to look for it, and so they couldn't find it. For me it is the unconscious mind and the fact that it accounts for the majority of our cognitive activity. I think it's interesting how we can simultaneously both know and not know things. It is also interesting, and perhaps even frightening, that we are not running the show to the extent that we think we are, at least not consciously. If you're talking to someone intently and you hand them something, more often than not they'll take it. Doesn't matter if it's a book, a pen, or an orange. No idea what the phenomenon is called, or if it's even psychological, but it's made for some great pranks. The gambler's fallacy, specifically, how the same series of events can lead to two different conclusions. Assume you have a perfectly fair coin, you toss it 5 times, and get 5 heads. You then ask 2 people what they think the 6th toss will be. Person A thinks that heads is obviously on a roll, so he bets on heads. Person B thinks that heads has happened too many times, which means that tails has to come up, so he bets on tails. They're both wrong. The odds of the 6th throw remain the same, regardless of what happened in the past. Note that this only works if the coin is fair. Synesthesia. This happens when you experience one sensory stimulus and it triggers another. For example, you hear a splash and think of the color blue. I get this quite vividly with tastes. If I see a plastic fork, I always taste ketchup for some reason. The monkey sphere. Simply put, how your brain has evolved to have an upper limit on the number of people you can conceptualize as people, after which they just become people, and are then clumped into groups, the perception of which can be warped drastically by hearsay, the media, your own bias, etc. Which goes a very long way to explain why many things in human society are the way they are. Locus of control, lock. Lock basically is how you view control over your own life. People either have an internal lock where they believe they have the power to control their own lives, or an external lock where you believe everything in life comes from a source other than yourself. I got fired because my boss hates me. I was late because traffic, etc. Close bracket. Now, what's interesting is that studies have shown people with an internal lock find greater satisfaction and success in almost every aspect of life. Except one. Being in a nursing home drives internal lock people crazy, while external lock people thrive. Cotard delusion. aka walking corpse syndrome, where the sufferer genuinely believes that they are dead, don't exist, or have no internal organs. Absolutely crazy. I can't imagine what it feels like walking around feeling actually, genuinely dead. Falia dukes. That 2 people can have the same shared psychosis or better, yet hallucinations is just insane. The transference there. As a psych major this one gets me. I'm going to psych nerd out a bit, since I did research on this phenomenon, but facial information processing errors associated with depression are super interesting. Folks with major depressive disorder, MDD, are actually way more likely than their peers to misidentify and selectively focus on emotional responses from other people. They have a much higher risk of misperceiving neutral faces as negative, and for missing facial cues that indicate positive information. At the same time, folks with MDD are also much better at noticing negative facial emotion indicators. Similarly, people with anxiety disorders tend to be much more likely to see neutral faces as angry. I find it really interesting because it shows how a mood disorder like depression is way more complex than we sometimes give it credit for. Information processing problems can be triggered by, and in turn reinforce, someone's depression. If we focus just on mood as our metric for what constitutes recovery, we miss some really interesting and potentially useful ways to provide treatment. How people who hate themselves hate people who like them. Cognitive dissonance. If our actions don't match up with our opinions, beliefs, wishes, etc., something will give and either our actions will change or our mindset will. Doesn't sound very interesting until you use this to hack your life in a sense. Ever heard of the law of attraction? It's kind of like this. The law of attraction claims that if you want something, just pretend like you already have it. Envision that you have it, and you live it. Want to lose weight? Envision you at your ideal weight every night. Sounds like complete BS, and in a sense it is. But it applies to cognitive dissonance, and if you play your cards right it works. For me, I was a very shy person. I wanted to become talkative, and get friends and guys. So, I would tell myself, I'm not shy. People love me. I have tons of friends. My beliefs did not match up with my actions. I wouldn't talk to people, but eventually something gave, and I started to act in accordance to my beliefs. Either you will give up on pretending, or you will become how you believe yourself to be. Something to think about. Law of attraction isn't a proven thing, but cognitive dissonance is.